Ski and welcome into another edition of the PHNX D-Backs podcast right here on PHNX. My name is Derek Montilla, of course, occasionally known as your mayor, PHNX. This man next to me is a triple threat in all the sports over at Jomboy. He's also a known snake aficionado. It's Dalton Feely. Dalton, thank you so much for joining me to discuss the series finale. That's a wrap for the Arizona Diamondbacks 2024 season.
You know, it's kind of funny. You asked me to come in on today. They win the game. There's something between me and the Snakes where I'm a little bit of a good luck charm. I don't know.
I would have you here for every game if I could. I would have you here for every game. But yes, you're absolutely right. The Diamondbacks win today, and they win big by a score of 11-2. You obviously posted your reaction. I loved it. I felt it in my soul. But what is your reaction, especially after seeing today's win, to just everything that's happened to this team over this past week and how miserable it really has been when they really did control their own destiny?
Last Sunday, we controlled our own destiny. It's an 8-0 game in Milwaukee. And then lo and behold, they lose 5 of their last 7 games. And now destiny is out of their hands. And we are hoping for the downfall of one of the Braves or the Mets. Sorry, Jolly.
It's so gross.
So gross.
It's so gross.
We're a little bit of a different vibe right now. I'm wearing black, a little semi-funeral, because I'm very worried. You got the purple.
I'm trying to steal the vibes back from Grimace. Grimace stole our purple. I'm stealing the purple back. I'm looking a little grimacy today. I don't care who wins tomorrow. I would just like a sweep, because that at this point is the only way the Diamondbacks make it into the postseason. The Mets win today by a score of 5-0. The Braves lose to the Royals by a score of 4-2. So here we are. We're down to this doubleheader that took place that shouldn't even be taking place on the day after the season is over. And even though the Diamondback season is done, we still don't know what the future holds for this team and if they'll make the mother effing yaffs. And that's where we're at today. But, man, the offense showed up today, and that was really impressive. 11 runs today by the Diamondbacks. You had Jake McCarthy going 3 for 5, Lourdes Gurriel going 3 for 5, Geno going for 3 for 5. He hit home run number 30, got RBIs number 100, 101. And it was just a day where you felt like, there's the Diamondbacks I've come to know and love.
It was frustrating. As Lizzo once said, it's about damn time with the offense. 15 scoreless innings at one point, basically playing the AAA El Paso Chihuahuas. And Finally, in that 4th inning, they put up a 6 spot. They love putting up runs in bunches, and it finally broke out on Sunday in the 4th inning. Like you said, Geno joins the 30-100 club for the first time since 2019 in his career. First Diamondbacks third baseman to do it since Eddie Escobar since 2019. So that's pretty cool. That's a positive, bright side. Kind of one game late with the offense. Last night, I know you guys talked about it, 0-0 through 8 innings. Randy Vasquez shuts the Diamondbacks down. And it puts the Diamondbacks in a wait-and-see moment where, in reality, it really should have been a celebration day for the Diamondbacks.
Right. And I think that's the most frustrating part about this is that, again, all credit to Vasquez, right? All credit to the player that did it. But this offense, this is the offense that the Diamondbacks have been pretty much the majority of the season. It's unfortunate that they kind of, I guess, just shied away. They went away at one of the most critical times in their entire season. They end the year with a record of 89-73, which honestly, if you would have told me that at the beginning of the season, if I would have told you that at the beginning of the season, that would feel like a success, but it's hard to right now.
Yeah, it's 5 more wins than they won last year. And now instead of celebrating being the 3rd spot in the wild card, we're kind of just waiting on the Mets and Braves. It's the best record the Diamondbacks have had since 2017 when they went on that playoff experience versus the Rockies and Dodgers. But It's just crazy. I'm thinking of like the Thanos meme where it's like we went on the World Series run and it's like, what did it cost? And it potentially costed a better record in
Everything.
2024.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping this doubleheader goes a sweep in one direction. I don't care who wins as long as you win 2 tomorrow.
And that's the big thing is obviously we know the implications here. We've discussed it. This was the scenario, one of the many scenarios that we discussed that the Diamondbacks could make it in. Mets won today, Braves lose today, Diamondbacks win. So essentially we're at a spot where we just need either of those teams to sweep tomorrow, which is kind of a nightmare scenario, right? It's very difficult for a team to sweep both of those games just in general, just if they were just being played by both teams because of it being a doubleheader, and doubleheaders tend to be difficult. The advantage here is that the Braves at least are the home team. The Braves still have something to prove. I think the Braves want to, kind of make up for this disaster of a season that was for them that really hasn't been, right? Like it could have been way worse considering the catastrophic injuries that they suffered. Yet this team hung in there. They won. They played better baseball down the stretch than the Diamondbacks did. And now they're in a position that they could be in the playoffs over the Mets or the D-backs, depending on how tomorrow goes.
Well, and it's really ironic too, because the Braves kind of got criticized with how they lined up their pitching going into this weekend. Sale was supposed to pitch versus the Mets, and then once the doubleheader got canceled, he was expected to pitch Friday. The Braves hold him off, and now he's in line to pitch Monday. So I guess the calling card for the Diamondbacks, the bright side is that if Sale goes game 1 and the Braves win game 1, that's a great, that's a great start. And the only fear then becomes at that point that whoever wins game 1, they don't necessarily need to try hard in game 2. They probably will try to save their bullpen. Yeah. And it's just at that point, it becomes a luck factor. Can their bench, can their B squad come through and win the second game of the doubleheader?
Well, and hopefully that won't be the case. Hopefully there'll be some, I don't know, like a little bit of respect for the game of baseball and a little bit of respect. Like obviously it's bad managing if you just put your starting lineup out there for a game you don't have to win and your best pitcher available out there for a game you don't have to win. I imagine you would want to, considering you now know you have a playoff spot, save that player, whoever you had lined up for game 2, to probably start in game 1 the following, or in the game 1 of the wild card, right? So at that point you are going to pull that person, but it's kind of what the Diamondbacks hope here is that whoever wins game 1 just plays strong in game 2. And there's no guarantee, because look at what happened yesterday to the Diamondbacks. A game by all accounts they should have won, and they didn't. Not only did they not win, but they kind of got embarrassed, like you said, by a AAA team there late in the game. Their best reliever got absolutely rocked. And, the Diamondbacks got held in check by a AAA pitcher who had an amazing day. But today, again, a big day for the offense. Ketel Marte had that home run, 2 for 5 today, 2 RBIs for Ketel. Geno, what can you say again about Geno, considering how slow his start was, that this man still reaches 30 home runs and 100 RBI this season? He was 3 for 5 today, 2 RBI, 1 home run. And again, this is the team. Like, this is what happens when this team is successful. You have kind of contributions across the board. Even though some guys might not have had a great day, you had a pretty great day on average from a lot of your stars here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was nice to see that you had Jake, you had Geno, you had Ketel, like you said. Brandon Pfaadt goes out and goes 5 1/3 of 9 Ks. He pitches great. I was a little surprised, Eric. At that moment of the game, it was still, I know it was a 7-2 game when they pulled Brandon, or 7-1, excuse me, runner was on base and he scored.
Sure.
He's at 79 pitches. I was a little bit surprised Torrey pulled him in that moment. I understand it was the 3rd time through the order, but the bullpen's been going heavy the last couple of days, and especially down this stretch. Pfaadt was, I don't want to say he was in cruise control because there was a runner on base, but he had looked really good. It worked out in the end. I was a little shocked they pulled Brandon in that moment.
Yeah, I was too. I think it was going back to last year in the playoffs where Torrey didn't really let Brandon go through the lineup a 3rd time. And it might have been a little bit of over managing, like we talked about yesterday. I mean, not that anyone can blame Torrey for turning to AJ Puck, right? Like there's just no way. But with the way things were going, it felt like, again, he was aggressively trying to make sure that the Diamondbacks, kept this game scoreless, kept the Padres at least scoreless, and just might have taken it one step too far, maybe when it wasn't time for that move yet. And again, it's not Torrey's fault that puck cost him in that moment, but it did, right? And it was the way that the things broke down. And today, I think it was kind of a little bit more of that. It just went the Diamondbacks' way. Diamondbacks in this case, had the bullpen go out. The bullpen, was solid. They did allow that run that Brandon Pfaadt, that runner that he was on, had on base. So he did give up 2 runs, but like you said, 5 1/3 innings pitched, 3 hits allowed, 1 earned, 1 walk, and 9 K. And for that reason, Brandon Pfaadt is our king snake. He went out there today and he did the thing. And of course, that is a big reason why the Diamondbacks won today. The offense was huge. They got lots of offensive contributions. I'm sure we could have probably given it to a few guys, including Geno for getting his home run number 30 and RBI number 100 and 101. But Brandon just gave this team the best chance that they could win in game 162, or in the best chance that they could to win in game 162. And that's how they got through this one. Of course, you don't want to get too high on this. It's a good day, though, that if the Diamondbacks should make the playoffs, it's a good day to see their offense kind of getting into a groove, right? And it's a great time for it, considering how bad their offense has been over this stretch during this past week.
And the pitching, too. I mean, the month of September has not been kind to the Arizona Diamondbacks pitching rotation, and the bullpen ranking last in bullpen and bottom 5 in starting pitcher ERA. Bright side, today was a much needed win. It was a must win, and they did win. So thank goodness it puts them in a better spot than it could have been. If it was a loss, it was signed, sealed, delivered. That was it. No playoffs. So at least there's some hope for tomorrow.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand fans, especially people in our chat, being very negative still, and rightfully so, right? Like, this team had a chance to win one more game, including that game against the Brewers that I don't ever want to really revisit, to put themselves in a position where they could have won, this themselves, and not have to be now in this precarious position that they are. It's so ironic that they are. It's so ironic that as we came down this stretch, there were just some big games that they shouldn't have lost that they did. And again, it's also very ironic that they won 5 more games than they did last year, and they might miss the playoffs now, but it's the way things shake up. They do have, they need a lot of luck. They need a lot of things to go their way tomorrow. And that part really sucks, but they won today. And I mean, looking back on this season, it's hard. It is really hard, considering what this team has gone through with the injuries, with all the ups and downs, to think of it as a failure if they don't make the playoffs. Yet I'm sure that's going to be kind of the feeling of a lot of the fan base.
It's such a weird feeling, because there was improvement in the regular season, especially the second half of the year. At one point, the Diamondbacks through July to beginning of September were the best team in baseball in record. And it just stinks that the last couple of weeks, there's a little bit of fatigue throughout the team, where they struggled and put themselves out of a team of destiny, controlling their own destiny, to, all right, Mets, all right, Braves, we need you guys, one of you guys to choke. I'm personally, I don't want to say this because my friend Jolly is a Met fan, but I need the Mets to Met. Like, I really
we all need the Mets to Met.
Yeah,
we've been waiting for it, and they kind of have been this week. It's the reason why the Diamondbacks are even in it right now.
September, I mean, the Braves, sure, I guess they can get swept. That's kind of like a result that I don't think is going to happen. You're going to have Sale on the mound. Schwellenbach, I believe, has beaten him every time he's pitched so far. So I think it's more likely the Mets would be the ones to get swept. But anyone, I don't care. I don't care who it is. It just thinks you're 100% right. The regular season, I think, is going to be viewed as a failure, though it was an improvement record-wise.
Yeah. I mean, overall, though, this team still feels like, if they can get in the playoffs, something can happen. It's just also, it's weird. And there's several people in the chat saying it would be a failure if they don't make the playoffs. And I respect that opinion. That's obviously determining whether or not the Diamondback season is a success or a failure is kind of like art. It's in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, they won more wins. They won more games. There's things about it that you could say were a success, but obviously, considering the heights they reached last year, making it to the World Series, if they don't do that same thing again, and honestly, even if they got to the World Series, it's like they would have to win more games or win the whole thing in order for it to be a success over last year. And there are some that call last year an anomaly. Maybe it was. Maybe the way things lined up for them in the playoffs lined up for them in such a way. But it's hard to call it an anomaly when they beat teams like the Dodgers and the Phillies on their way to the World Series. It was just baseball. And honestly, like, this is one of those things where the Diamondbacks had a really good run for 2 months. And unfortunately, that run came at a good time to get them in this position, to get them the wild card, to get them, to have them be part of this race. But it almost came too early, where like they did seemingly run out of steam here in the last week. I don't know if it's energy. I don't know if it's just the pressure of the situation. I mean, I've noticed that at times with this team that the pressure doesn't seem to bring the best out of them early on when there were those heavy expectations from last year. A lot of guys on this team struggled. I know that a lot of the guys that they added, like Jordan Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez, have had their struggles as well. So overall, it's been one of those seasons that you really thought the Diamondbacks had it in the bag early on. And now here we are waiting on the outcome of a makeshift doubleheader to determine if they'll even be in the postseason.
I have a 30-second rant real quick about this doubleheader. It's unrelated to anyone. It is directed.
Do we want to time it? I mean, what do we want to do here? You have the floor, sir. Please, like I said, this is a safe space.
Rob Manfred and MLB, this is directed at you. I know you guys are watching, obviously. Listen, it's hard to predict the weather. I understand that. But the one thing that's relatively accurate to predict in the weather is hurricanes. You can track to see what their path is coming through. You knew it was going to rain Wednesday, Thursday, and potentially Friday. Both teams were off on Monday. I understand that you have to plan to travel and hotels and whatnot. I understand that. That said, it's an emergency in terms of weather, making sure your players are safe too, to have them in that location during a hurricane and to not move that game up. And now this doesn't only hurt the Mets and Braves to play. This impacts the Diamondbacks playoff odds. Unbelievable.
It impacts a lot of things, doesn't it? I mean, people have said it's not fair for the Mets and the Braves, and that's true. Like, the Mets and the Braves now have to play 2 games tomorrow while everybody else gets a day off and a travel day. And then they have to play a wild card series starting on Tuesday, no matter who wins and advances, if maybe it's both of them. And then both advance, and great, they both have advanced, but they definitely are at a disadvantage in that series.
The Brewers and Padres are hoping they split tomorrow, because then they're getting an exhausted Braves team or an exhausted Mets team in the wild card. The bright side for the Diamondbacks is that if someone ends up sweeping the doubleheader, they do have that rest day tomorrow. I know the travel plans might be impacted because you're waiting to see what happens. But that said, you don't have to play a 9-inning baseball game, or let alone 18 innings of baseball prior to playing a wild card series. So the Padres and Brewers 1,000% are hoping they split, the Braves and Mets split that series.
We're supposed to be here today, I guess, basically giving a time of death on the Arizona Diamondbacks season. And yet there is no lab coat. I have no medical equipment around my neck because there is no time of death being declared, oddly enough. And I'm not saying that. I just mean, like, people are saying they're cooked. People are saying they're done. The odds are not in their favor. That's for sure. But it does not mean that the Diamondbacks still might not be in the playoffs at this time tomorrow, which is just an absolute crazy thing to say. And yeah, the sports boys believe. If they believe, why can't we all believe? Yes. Right? Let's get out there. What are we doing here? I mean, I get it. It sucks. The way this went down sucks. This team deserves all the criticism. I know a lot of people accuse me, and rightfully so, of being a Torey Lovullo homer. Mostly it's because I really enjoy the man as a human being. Like, I have openly admitted that, but also because a lot of times I feel like the blame gets placed on the manager far more than it does on the players that didn't perform. And there's lots of instances where Torey's made some bad calls. I think Jesse and I would agree with that. And we've had our own gripes, and I'm sure you have as well. But at the same time, it's kind of wild considering that, you're putting your guys out there, you're putting your best players out there, and they're not getting the job done. And I don't, again, when they go collectively cold like they did in yesterday's game, I really don't know who to blame. If we should blame Mather, the hitting coach, I don't know if we should blame Torey. I don't know if we blame the individuals, but it gets to a point where I feel like, especially in baseball, we don't blame the athletes themselves for not performing enough versus, putting it all on the manager. But I get it though.
Yeah, I think the manager just becomes an easy scapegoat in that moment. And I think on social media, and I'm guilty of this too, it sometimes is a result-based criticism or praise that the
It
manager
is.
gets. Like
It is,
AJ
yeah.
Puck AJ Puck in a 0-0 game had not given up a home run this season and gives up back-to-back home runs in the top of the ninth yesterday. Are we going to blame Torrey for putting in our best reliever in the ninth inning of a scoreless game? No, you can't do that. But I bet you some people were criticizing Torrey.
Sure.
And don't get me wrong. Like, the manager does deserve some praise and some criticism, but I think sometimes they get too much, not enough love, and they get too much criticism. I will criticize Torrey when I need to, but at least for yesterday's instance, the only thing I guess we could criticize wasn't the lineup itself. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, they didn't take BP. They weren't on the field yesterday.
Yeah, that's something Jesse brought up. And what was odd was I guess one of the games against the Giants that they went flat offensively, they didn't take BP, and Jesse and I discussed it that day. And so when I was talking about that with him yesterday, he confirmed that, yes, no, in fact, yesterday they did not take BP. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't go hit in the cage, but
right.
It's a weird thing that I guess Paul Sewald had suggested at one point that kind of helped, because it was during the middle of the regular season and, guys were kind of tired, and for some reason not taking BP kind of helped out. But I would think at this point we would learn not to listen to anything Paul Sewald has to say, and not. No, I'm sorry. That was mean.
Harsh.
I can be mean. Paul Sewald actually brings a tremendous amount of joy to this team. And I mean, again, sometimes suggestions like that from veterans based on their past experiences can be what this team needs. Wasn't really what they needed yesterday, obviously, based on the result. And of course, when things have worked for you in the past, you're going to continue to try them until they don't work for you. And yesterday was definitely that case with the offense, but seemed like they took BP today, and maybe vitamin D or whatever else they needed to take for their offense to score 11 runs, because this was a big day for this team and just something we really needed to see. This is the Diamondbacks. They had 21 occurrences this season of scoring 10 runs or more, which is the most in Major League Baseball, ahead of the Dodgers and ahead of the Twins. And then the Diamondbacks 15 plus hit games, which today was another one of those. Again, the most in the majors, ahead of the Orioles and ahead of the Brewers. I think what you're seeing when you see those stats is the reasons why the Diamondbacks lead the league in offense. And it's not necessarily that they're just this consistent offense. They've just had a tremendous amount of games where their offense blew up and scored a ton of runs. And it puts them in that position where statistically a lot of people look at their stats and say, how are they being no hit? We even did that yesterday. How is the best offense in Major League Baseball being no hit by a damn AAA pitcher? What the hell is going on here? Right. And the reason why is because the Diamondbacks do go cold in a lot of instances, including, like the game one of this series when it's the game after a day off. And then yesterday, inexplicably, they just go cold against pitchers that they're not familiar with. Like when, rookie pitchers start against them, or a team throws a bullpen start against them or anything like that, they fall apart. You put one of the best, pitchers in the game out there like Justin Verlander or Blake Snell, and they absolutely rock them early and knock them out of the game early, right? So I can't explain this team at times other than the fact that I feel like maybe they planned too much on one game plan, and the minute that gets changed or pivots, they haven't really had enough time to have an alternate game plan, which might be, once again, poor managing.
I think you're right in terms of game planning versus pitchers that they know, a la Verlander and Snell, among others, where they've had success. Because I think when you see a guy and you know a guy, you just know flat out who they are.
Especially
what they
Brent Strom, right?
Right. You just know how they throw. When it's a pitcher you haven't seen as much, maybe you don't have as much film on them, it's more of an unknown, the mystery, where it's hard to adapt to someone. Whereas when you game plan, you feel much more comfortable. Great point about Verlander in the chat. He had been struggling, and he even said, quick side, he had said he came back way too early from the IL. He was trying to help his team get into the playoff spot, which obviously they did, maybe not because of him. But yeah, this the game planning, I'm wondering if it's just based on if you're comfortable versus someone, if you know who they are, do you have enough film on them, and just a lack of adjustment, especially in that bullpen game situation.
Yeah. Well, now what we have is the Mets and the Braves who play each other. And I mean, I get it. We've discussed all the reasons why this is bad for the Diamondbacks, but there are a few reasons why you can have some hope, right? It is, Braves do have home field advantage in this one. These two teams absolutely hate each other. And of course, that hate, that spite might be our only hope. It might be our little light at the end of the tunnel, because that might be enough of a reason for whoever wins game 1 to keep their foot on the pedal in game 2 and eliminate their NL East opponent. Again, I'm sure the Padres took a little joy in beating the Diamondbacks yesterday and putting them one step closer to the brink of elimination. I'm sure they would have liked to do that today, but just didn't really feel the need to keep pummeling, a team that was already down. And again, it's not like they didn't try, right? The Diamondbacks just did a good job today. You got to give your credit where credit is due. Diamondbacks did a good job today. Padres didn't put their best lineup out there, but they still had Luis Suarez out there. They still had a lot of their starters out there, and they still gave an effort. They just got beat today by the Diamondbacks. And again, there's some positives going forward based on them at least having a day like this. I know that it doesn't always translate into them going on a roll. It just feels nice to see them kind of be in sync like this, have so many different guys contributing the way that they did today, and then potentially going into the postseason and, maybe having that having that offense stay hot, stay on a roll. But yeah, right now, that's it. That's all our hope is based on hatred and spite between division rivals who want to end each other's season more than they're interested in potentially taking a game off on a doubleheader.
Yeah, I it's just so funny that the Braves put themselves in a better spot. They had a 5-game winning streak going into today's game where they finally had it snapped, but it was just fate apparently. The Braves somehow just find a way. They're just certain teams are inevitable. The Braves going on a 5-game winning streak to put them back into controlling their own destiny. The Diamondbacks and Mets kind of falling apart this last week. Like you said, it's just now one of these teams, please choke. We're craving it. We need it.
And this sucks, man, because again, we've had so many great moments this year. I felt like the Diamondbacks, who looked dead in the water after, the month of May had come and gone. It looked like their season was kind of a wrap. They have this resurgence in the beginning of July, and then they end up being the best team in baseball in several categories and in wins and in stretches for a couple of months, right? And that's it was so impressive to see this team fight back and have guys like Corbin and Geno, who struggled early on, kind of come back online. But yeah, this is I don't know. Again, it's Sunday, right? It's football day. We can all relate to fantasy football, right? I had an instant. My fantasy football team is not very good. I've lost some guys to injury. Right. Things aren't looking good over here in the repeat camp for the current.
It's early.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's early, but you get what I'm saying, right? So there are times when you are a fantasy football player where you would rather the opposition just beat you by 40 points rather than having to spend a week thinking about the fact that you could have started one of your guys on the bench and that would have been enough points to get you ahead, right? That's not where we're at with the Diamondbacks season. Should the Diamondbacks miss, there's going to be a very lengthy discussion on this podcast, on other podcasts. Get that Waffle House Montilla thing off of there, you creep.
Waiting for you to
yeah, he's a monster. I wasn't going to acknowledge him, but get it off my screen. But there's a lot of picking games apart. Obviously, we already talked about that loss in the finale to the Brewers and everything that happened there. Games to the Rockies down the stretch, little games that they should have won here and there, not being able to win the series against the Giants. There's going to be a lot of games that we pick apart, but I'm going to tell you, man, I mean, it sucks to be this close and lose out on the postseason than it would to just have been eliminated, 5 or 6 days ago, because this is as close as you can come to making the postseason and missing out as humanly possible.
And especially being Diamondback fans, we know, at least in recent 20 years, like the last 20 years, basically the whole franchise history, it's basically one playoff appearance and then a 5 to 7 year hiatus, and then you're back in. And so I'm really worried where this is, last year was the year we made it, and then it's going to be a little bit of a hiatus again. Is that going to happen? I sure hope not.
It's going to be interesting. They don't lose a lot of guys this offseason. They still have a lot of this team. And I mean, part of that is going to be Jordan Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez being around next year as well, right? It's going to be interesting to see how those guys factor in after having a normal offseason and maybe perhaps remaining healthy and being a part of the starting rotation again next year.
And
This team
reporters
might still, I mean, this team might still be good next year for sure. For sure. Matt is very angry at us. He keeps telling us to stop whining and such in the chat. He said many other teams would love our chances right now. That is true. There are
Yes.
teams that absolutely have that E next to their name, and I don't feel like we're whining, but that's your interpretation of it. I feel like we're just kind of like, this sucks, but at least they're still in it, right? Because
Yes.
it does suck for it to be out of your hands and it to be dependent on a situation that very much sounds like it's, against the Diamondbacks. It sounds like it sucks that this doubleheader comes down to, again, these teams knowing that they can be in the playoffs. That's what changes this. Had these games just taken place when they were supposed to, perhaps at a neutral site or in some other arrangement, then those teams would have just played the games normally and they would have played hard because they both would have been trying to make the playoffs. Now, instead, what you have is two teams that absolutely know the situation. They know that they have no reason to put their guys out there any more than they're already being forced to by playing an extra day a game after the postseason, and it just doesn't shape up well for the Diamondbacks, to be honest.
We were just talking about both sides of the coin because we're happy this season. We're talking about the successes that the Arizona Diamondbacks have had. 89 wins is not a bad feat at all. It's quite impressive. They just had their chances to put themselves in the postseason already. It would have been nice, as we've mentioned, to control our own destiny rather than sitting on the couch and hoping and praying and whatever you're going to do that one of the Mets and Braves get swept tomorrow.
Yeah. That part is not great. That part is not great.
I do want to say, listen, this happened in the NFL, Chargers, Raiders, Sunday Night Football. If both teams tied, they both got in the playoffs. And you know what both these teams did? They played to win the game. And sure enough, we're hoping that the Braves and Mets, they want to play to win the doubleheader, sweep the doubleheader.
All right. Well, I got another opinion here, and I value Ina Jackson's opinion very much. Ina says, not going to agree with that, Derek. New York Mets want to own the second place, meaning that the Mets would want to leapfrog the Braves by winning that second game, should they win game one and take over the second spot to play the Padres instead of playing the Brewers. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I would hope so. I would definitely hope so, but I really don't know the answer to that. I don't know what I think that what you have at the end of the day is no matter how much either team might want to obviously leapfrog the other team or get the higher position, whatever the case may be. The problem there is, once again, the way this is set up, which was Dalton's, rant earlier, what he's really fed up with here, right? Well, I mean, it's a disadvantage for those two teams. So ultimately, whoever wins game one, it's like they want to take all the guys that they can and give them as much rest, even if it's just not playing in a second game consecutively back to back as they possibly can. It doesn't mean that they won't have potentially two lineups ready for tomorrow that would be lineups that are able to win a baseball game, right? The problem is both teams want to win game one. That's the problem, right? And so what the advantage there, I guess you could say, for the team that does win game one is that they will probably put a fresh lineup in for game two, whereas the team that loses game one is probably going to start a lot of the same players that they started in game one because it's a critical game. They want to win it. And now here they are in game two, and they're probably going to put their best players out there. So the Braves, who don't have a lot of options as far as personnel go, are probably going to start the same lineup should they lose game one and game two. And I mean, there is an advantage there because you're sending a fresh Mets lineup out there, even though that they might not be as formidable against a Braves lineup that just played a 2.5 hour baseball game.
Right. I mean, that's a great point. That's something that I hadn't thought of. So it's really well put, talking about the fatigue of a lineup going back-to-back games if you lose game one. And the other point is it's a back-to-back doubleheader. It's not one of those double headers where it's game, long extended break where you can kind of rehab and then go at it later in the night. It's 40-minute break, and that's it.
It's like 10-10, and then the second game, at least time here. I'm sorry, I know you're East Coast, but in Arizona, it's 10-10 a.m. for the first game and then like 1:40 for the second game. So yeah, there is not a lot of time in between those two games, especially if that game one takes a long time, which it could, because if it's a competitive baseball game, it could drag on, right?
The fear I have for game one, we just don't want this to go into extra innings. That would be the biggest fear I have, because extra innings mean more bullpen arms are going to be used. And I think the team that wins, hypothetically, if it goes into an extra inning game, will preserve somebody's arm.
Good point.
So
that's a good point.
That's another rooting interest. We hope this game it goes on for a long time, but maybe just for 9 innings.
I hate this. I hate this so much. Wow.
I hate it. I love it. All the emotions we're gonna have for the next 48 hours, 24 hours.
And again, sports, you and I were talking about this beforehand. There's things in my life, and I was talking about this with Shane too. There are things in my life that I have eliminated because they bring me sadness. Right. Sports is one of those things that, yes, brings me a lot of sadness, but it brings me a lot of joy too. Right. And it's like some of my highest highs have been based on sporting events. And I know this sucks. And I know putting yourself out there to believe in a team and trust that a team is going to do something as, improbable as the Diamondbacks making the postseason is heartbreaking if they don't tomorrow, right? But let's for 24 hours just put all of our hatred towards whatever team loses game 1 of tomorrow's doubleheader and hope all the bad things in the world happen to them and only them in game 2 of that doubleheader, so that our beloved Snakes can make the World Series, or not World Series, but that's down the road. Make the playoffs. We got to start with step 1, and then we'll get there to the rest of that stuff. But Dalton, what are your thoughts though? Who do you think maybe comes out tomorrow? And do you think we're unfortunately going to see some sort of split?
I thought you were going to go with the kumbaya method. It's like, everyone be happy, let's go Diamondbacks. It wasn't Diamondbacks positivity. It was more so hatred to whatever team loses. And you know what? I'm eating that up.
We have no, we can't, yes, the love is there. We reserve the love for maybe when they make a wild card round, but for right now, it's a focused laser of hatred on whoever wins or whoever loses game 1, so that they lose both of the games.
I think, to answer your question, fate-wise, the Braves will win game 1. I think we should say out in the world, if Chris Sale loses tomorrow, he's ineligible to win the NL Cy Young. Put as much pressure as possible.
I'm on board.
Go out, pitch your ass off. Why not? You want to prove you're the NL Cy Young? Pitch the best game of your year so far. Why not? And the reason why I think also the Braves are going to game 1, Mets are going to Met. I mean, right? They struggled against the Braves. They usually beat the Phillies, but Mets are going to Met. And then game 2, all the pressure is on a young Mets team with a rookie manager coming in Atlanta in a divisional game, playing for a playoff spot. Hopefully the moment is too big for the New York team that has seen a lot of struggles recently. The Braves, they've been here. They've been in a lot of postseasons. They won, 6 or 7 NL East titles until this year got snapped.
Yeah.
I think the Braves will win game 1, and then game 2, I am, fingers crossed, hoping they go back-to-back and win the second one.
One more silver lining before I let you get out of here, and that is the fact that the Diamondbacks did not have to use the milkman Zach Gallen today.
Yeah.
So that frees him up should they make the postseason to start in game 1. And that was something that Torey Lovullo had suggested that he might pull out of his bag today if the Diamondbacks needed it.
Listen, he's warming up too. Late in the game, he was getting loose. He wasn't getting hot. He was just getting ready. But I don't think he got, throwing a full pen in. So at least he didn't go 100%. I'm just curious. My last question is, in a hypothetical situation, if you're Atlanta or if you're New York, who do you want to play in the playoffs if you want to get there? The Mets had just seen the Brewers and they had their struggles, except, besides today's game. Would you want to see Milwaukee again in a span of less than a week to play Milwaukee in a playoff series? Or would you rather play the San Diego Padres, who's arguably been the hottest team in baseball?
I think that the Diamondbacks getting that final playoff spot and playing the Milwaukee Brewers is the best case scenario for them. And that's just because they did play the Brewers 7 times. So these teams do know each other well, but there wasn't a real advantage, one way or another. The Diamondbacks got close to sweeping them in Milwaukee, which is where that series will be played. Not to mention the fact that the Diamondbacks absolutely have at least have some sort of track record of having success there on the road against the Brewers. I think that just feels differently. And again, I'm sure the playoff environment in Milwaukee is great, but there is also something to be said about the madhouse that is, Petco Park and how crazy that environment can be during the postseason. We've seen how crazy it can be during, the regular season. It's still it's still not the bank. It's still not other places the Diamondbacks have played that are very loud with very, passionate fans. It's just a matter of like, I don't know, there's something about Milwaukee. It's very similar to Chase Field, and it's just a place where the Diamondbacks have had some success recently. So based on that, I would rather face, I think, the Brewers than the Padres. But I don't know. I mean, recency bias is factoring in there as to how this series went, considering the Diamondbacks almost got no hit by one of their AAA pitchers on a day where they didn't even put their best lineup out there. I don't know if I want that smoke with the Padres just yet.
It's deja vu all over again. Let's face Milwaukee and start what we did in 2024 and 2023 and do it in 2024, because why not?
Yeah. Let's just do it again, man. Well, hey, Dalton, I thank you so much for joining us, brother. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter. Is it DFeely 15?
Oh, 14. Close.
Close. I was so close.
You're good.
All right, DFeely 14. But of course, follow all the wonderful stuff they are doing over there at Jomboy. You guys are amazing. You continue to kill it. We are proud to partner together with you on some of this stuff we do, and it's always a blast watching all the fun stuff you guys are doing.
I'm blessed to be part of you guys. You guys are fantastic. Love seeing your stuff. Love hopping on. So thank you for having me. Just tell Jesse, if the Diamondbacks get into the playoffs tomorrow, he's got to do a cannonball into the pool. I think that's got to be a requirement.
It's why I like, that's another thing we talked about. We had Archie on the other day, right? And that's been great to have Archie on, by the way.
Right.
But to ask him like about like celebrating and stuff, right? Like the Diamondbacks, when are they going to celebrate if they do make the playoffs? Like that's most likely going to happen on like the plane to Milwaukee, right? But you still don't want to get maybe too drunk on an airplane ride when you're going to have to, like, you know, still play a baseball game the following day. I don't know. Like I was very concerned. I was very concerned about the celebration, and when it took place, I wanted to be a part of it as much as I possibly could.
Tell Jesse that's the only thing. That's the only thing the Diamondbacks are allowed to do to celebrate, because they have a game to play Tuesday. If that happens, he goes cannonball. That's it.
I'll go push him in. Awesome. Well, brother, I thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we'll have you on again regardless of what happens, we'll have you on again. But maybe we'll have you again on about some exciting playoff stuff instead of just off-season stuff.
Fingers crossed. Appreciate you, Derek.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Well, of course, we will have Jesse Friedman joining us here shortly from Chase Field, but we want to thank all of you guys so much. I just wanted to take a moment before Jesse does join us to just personally thank you guys for this particular season. This is a wrap on the 2024 season, and not to get too mushy with you guys, but this has been an incredible ride. This year has been I know last year was an incredible ride, obviously, through the mother effing yachts and everything that we got to do. But this season was so much fun, and we are so thankful to have so many of you guys joining us this year. Of course, if you have not subscribed to the PHNX Sports YouTube channel, you're just here, you're PHNX Sports curious, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Sign up for notifications, hit that notifications button. That way you don't miss whenever our shows go live, because we do emergency podcasts like this. And Thunderbolt, thank you. That's the most positive comment I've heard from you in 162 games, and I love you. I appreciate you. So it's always a pleasure, Derek. You guys are great. Thank you so much for you. Of course, if you have not subscribed or hit that like button, we got to hold the line. Damon's not here. Damon's doing the Cardinal thing, but you know what? Damon is still messaging me about Diamondbacks right now as we speak, and he wants you to hold the line for all through tomorrow. We got to hold the line. We got to hit the like button, of course, but you got to hold the line, and you got to be here for all the excitement. We have discussed it, and I think we are going to put together tomorrow a little bit of a watch along. So if you guys want to join us for that, we are going to try our best to put together a watch along to watch both of those games between the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves. And that starts at 10:10 in the morning. So make sure to join us for that. Of course, this guy here is joining me from Chase Field for the final time, potentially this season. It's the one and only Jesse Friedman. Yeah, that got dark and sad real fast. Sorry about that. But it could be the final time that you're joining us from Chase Field. We have no idea though, Jesse, because this season, despite this is a wrap on the 2024 regular season, we have no idea if the Diamondbacks are actually in the playoffs or not.
We have no idea. Yeah. And this is the scenario that when we were talking through stuff on Thursday and the various things that could happen, this was one of the scenarios. It's not exactly what we talked about. We more so talked about it in the context of the D-backs going 2-1 and maybe the Mets playing a little bit better.
Yeah.
But it also is very possible in the situation we have here where the D-backs went 1-2, but the Mets also lost a couple of games over the weekend, and it sets up a scenario where, I mean, on paper, getting a sweep in a doubleheader is not impossible. I mean, on paper, a sweep is just as likely as a split, but that doesn't feel like the case here, right? The reality is that whichever team wins the first game of the doubleheader is not going to have any incentive to win the second game, other than trying to keep a division rival out of the postseason, which I do think is a very real and legitimate thing. So I don't expect people are talking about collusion, some sort of a handshake agreement where each team wins one game. I think that's utter nonsense. I mean, this is the Braves and the Mets we're talking about. These are not teams that like each other, especially with this game being in Atlanta. There is no part of the Braves that wants to see the New York Mets clinch a postseason spot on their home turf, even if it's in a scenario where the Braves also clinch a spot on the same day. So this is a situation where you feel better about the Braves' chances of pulling this off, right?
Yes.
If the Mets lose the first game tomorrow, my understanding is that Brian Snitker is going to use Chris Sale in game 2. And not only is Chris Sale going to win the NL Cy Young Award, but he would probably be facing kind of the B team for the Mets because they would have already clinched in the first game. So I think you have a better shot if the Braves win the first game and they're just trying to kind of stick it to the Mets and keep them from the postseason. And the still going to be kind of a B roster, I think, in the second game in that situation. But, maybe they're able to find a way to win that one. But the reality is the odds are kind of stacked against the D-backs in this situation. And there's no winners with the Hurricane and this whole fiasco, but the D-backs it's a pretty significant disadvantage for them for sure.
So Chris Sale will not start in game 1 of the doubleheader.
That's my understanding, is that the Braves want to save Chris Sale for they will only pitch him in a do or die game. Otherwise, they want to save him for game 1. So I imagine they're going to roll out someone else for the first game of that series. And if they win, then they're not pitching Chris Sale in the second game, which again it would not be great for the D-backs in that scenario because the Braves are probably throwing, some guy from AAA or whatnot in the second game. But, Randy Vasquez sure threw a pretty good game against the D-backs here yesterday. So it's not impossible. It's not impossible for, even a AAA caliber arm to find a way to help a team win in the second game.
People are saying Schwellenbach is going to start game 1. Is that right?
I think my audio is cutting out here.
You did.
All right. Am I back?
You're back.
I sound good again.
Yeah.
I haven't looked, but that sounds totally reasonable to me that Schwellenbach would start the first game. And then, if the Braves win that one, I don't think they're rolling out Chris Sale for the second game. And then, a piece of Yoshi, who we know is our resident Mets fan around here. Wouldn't surprise me if the Mets do what he's describing there, where Luis Severino is kind of the saved bullet for the Mets. So they would hold on to him for game 2. So the reality is the game 2 matchup is on paper will either be Chris Sale against like a AAA pitcher for the Mets, or it will be Luis Severino against a AAA pitcher for the Braves, which again is why this weather situation, frankly, it sort of screws the Diamondbacks. We talked about this the other day. It is much likelier that this little 2-game stretch ends in a split if it's played last week, when neither team knows what they're fighting for and is just trying to win as many games as they can. And both teams had their best pitchers lined up to start against each other. Whereas tomorrow it sets up a very lopsided game for the second game of that doubleheader. So it really is unfortunate for the D-backs. I mean, if they do not make the postseason tomorrow, it's going to be hard not to ask the what if questions about a hurricane that changed the schedule. But at the same time, we're also going to be asking a lot of what if questions about what we saw on the field and the 8-run blown lead and what's happened the last couple of days here against the Padres, what happened earlier this week against the Giants, last week's series against the Rockies. The D-backs left a lot of games on the table, and if they do miss the postseason tomorrow, it's not just going to be because the schedule, the Hurricanes screwed them. It's going to be because they did not play well enough to deserve it.
See, Dalton was on earlier, Jesse, and he made me feel so full of hope and joy. And then you came, and I swear, in less than 4 minutes, just sucked it all out.
That's why I was so happy to have Dalton on the show, because I figured we kind of balance each other out, right?
Yeah,
he'd give all the positive vibes.
I'd
shut everything down.
And one of you could be the stunt double for the other, so there's always that as well. But the Diamondbacks at least did what they needed to do today. It might have been too little, too late, Jesse, but they won today by a score of 11-2. And of course, what was the vibes like post game? I imagine that they're still not very joyful, despite the fact that they won today.
Yeah, we'll be posting a lot of footage out on Twitter, maybe on YouTube as well. So be looking for that. I don't have quite as many clips with me as I wish I did. It took quite a while for everything to be wrapped up after this game. We were not allowed in the clubhouse for quite a while. I think the players were being briefed on kind of what the plan is for tomorrow. At least that's my speculation for why it took so long.
Sure.
Yeah, the vibes in the clubhouse were weird. There's a lot of I think hope and satisfaction on some level with an 89 win season that is genuinely a really good thing. I mean, if you told either of us before the season started that the D-backs were going to win 89 games, I think we'd say, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good season for them. That's a pretty good outcome for them. But the reality is that the Braves and the Padres and the New York Mets have just played so well lately that the bar for that third wild card was raised significantly higher than I think any of us anticipated that it would be. So yeah, the vibes are a little bit strange. Guys are talking about how it sucks that they don't control their own destiny. But at the same time, there's things are not nearly as down as they would have been had this been the day that the D-backs were eliminated, right? It's a very different feel. So just a bizarre situation all the way around.
All right. Well, we do have more from Jake McCarthy, who was 3 for 5 today, had a great day against the Padres. We talked about it the other day. Maybe he should have started the whole series against the Padres with how good he's been in his last, 10, 11 games against that team. But here's what Jake had to say post-game.
Are you nervous heading into tomorrow? What's that like?
I don't know. I mean, it's so weird. I've never been a part of something like this, but I keep saying it. Whoever wins that first game is my favorite team tomorrow, and we'll just we'll root for the best.
And that's how we all feel, right? I mean, no matter what happens there, we got to root for whoever wins game one. Jesse, I know that this might be a long shot. I brought up this theory to Dalton earlier, but there is the idea that whoever loses game one most likely put their best lineup out there. And then they're going to need the majority of those players in game two. Like, they might switch a couple of guys out depending on who's starting for the opposing team. But for the most part, they're going to put their best lineup out again. And so there is that little fatigue factor in a doubleheader of the fact that, game two for whoever wins it will most likely have a fairly fresh starting lineup of guys that didn't play in the first game.
Yeah, it's again, it's going to be pretty lopsided.
I'm trying. I'm reaching so hard. This is when they said coping yesterday, this is definitely coping, but I'm coping in the best possible way.
So your case is that the team that loses will have already played its best lineup in the first game, and it's going to have to put out its best lineup again. So even though it's
close to it, right? Like, mean, theoretically,
I think that's reasonable. Maybe
they're not going to put out. Maybe a couple left-handed guys, right-handed guys swapping out or something like that. But for the most part, whoever the Mets put out there in game one, majority of those guys are going to play in game two again if they lose that game.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable if you're reaching for positives.
I'm trying.
I can. Torrey did say after the game, he was asked about the situation, of course, and he said that he has, he talked up the Braves organization and the Mets organization, and he said that he knows those managers, Brian Snitker and Carlos Mendoza, and he doesn't think that either of them has a lay down bone in their body, is something along those lines is how he described it. So his expectation is that whatever team wins that first game is still going to go out and put forth an effort. Are they going to play their best players? Are they going to play, pitchers that they expect to pitch in a postseason game the next day? It would probably be irresponsible for them to do so. But What the D-backs do have on their side is that other teams have a little bit more pitching depth than they do. And so sometimes a team going out there with a guy who's called up from AAA or someone who's a lower leverage reliever or a long reliever type, those guys on other teams are not necessarily terrible players, right? We saw that today with the Kansas City Royals and the fact that they were able to beat the Atlanta Braves. That wasn't the best version of the Royals pitching staff going out there and doing that.
Right.
They still threw some of their better arms. But this is baseball, right? It's what we've been saying the last couple of days, where really anything can happen. Randy Vasquez can one hit the best offense in baseball for 6 innings. Those kinds of things happen, and anything can happen tomorrow as well.
It's gross. It's gross, Jesse. Well, did you have any other things you noticed there from Chase Field? And I mean, again, like when it comes to the Diamondbacks plans tomorrow, how do they plan for this? Do they all sit around at Chase Field and watch this doubleheader together?
Yeah, it sounds like the plan for the players is to, I want to say they're meeting here at the ballpark. There's going to be a light workout of some sort. And it sounds like they're more so meeting up to watch the second game. I don't think they're having like a watch party for the first game because frankly, it's not really going to tell them a whole lot. Although again,
starts pretty early too.
Yeah, it starts at 10 a.m. Arizona time. Again, I will say I think it's a lot better for the D-backs if the Braves win the first game. It's much easier for me to imagine them sweeping than for the Mets to sweep. But yeah, they're going to do a light workout here tomorrow. They're going to watch the second game together. And then they're going to have an airplane ready to take them to Milwaukee, and they might get on that airplane and they might not. And it's a pretty weird scenario where they're just going to be here and see what happens.
I'm just thinking about that pilot, Jesse, getting that phone call and being like, we don't need you. And being like, oh, thought they were going to celebrate on this private jet that I was flying. It looks like I'll just go put it back in the hangar. But I'm also thinking of how sad we all will be, Jesse, should that phone call happen. One guy, of course, that helped make things happen was Mr. 30 home runs, Mr. 100 RBI, Geno Suarez. And I know you got a chance to speak to him in the clubhouse after the game.
Yeah, Geno had a lot after this one. So yeah, we'll go ahead and play the clip. Geno was asked about the 30-100 season, and I followed up and asked about specifically given how poorly his season started, just kind of what those numbers meant to him. And he took the opportunity to thank a whole lot of people. So here's what Geno had to say.
Yeah, exactly. You know, after I have that first half that I wasn't that good, and then be able to I had a very good second half and be able to had 30 homer after that. You know, it's awesome. I gotta feel proud of myself, proud of my work, and I give you a lot of credit on the hitting coach. You know, they help me a lot. They support me a lot. They work with me hard than extra. You know, and that's something that I appreciate. It's something that I want to say thank you to them and thank to Tori for believing in me. You know, give me an opportunity to play every day, even when I don't doing good for the team, and they believe in me, and that means a lot. You know, that's something that that's why you're here for. You know, you do your best and you work hard, and they believe in me, and they give me the opportunity. They wear this jersey every day, and you know, for me, it's awesome. I just got to say thanks so much, everybody, and my teammates, my family, my wife, my daughters, my mom, my daddy. They're always there. My teammates, they're always there. Even when I was bad, even when I have bad days, they support me. And
God, I love Geno. I could have listened to him go on thank people for a million years, but
well, he did. He went on for a million
cut
years.
him off after a while.
Yeah, I mean, I could have thrown a 4-minute clip in here. We could have just
Wrap it up
for 4 minutes.
Wrap it up.
he also thanked the we don't have this part in the clip, but he also thanked the writers. And he said, thank you for all of the bad words that we wrote about him in the first couple months of the season. He said it helped him stay energized or something along those lines. So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, whatever happens tomorrow, right? Whether the Diamondbacks get in the postseason or not, I think we can all agree that they're picking up that club option on Geno Suarez for 2020, for 2025.
They'd be dumb not to.
He really elevated this offense because last year the D-backs were a bottom 5 team offensively at third base. It was Evan Longoria. It was a struggling Josh Rojas. It was a struggling Emmanuel Rivera, Jace Peterson as well. Geno was an everyday guy who was not only solid defensively, but one of the better hitters among third basemen in all of baseball as well. So there have only been 4 Diamondbacks who are primary third basemen who have had a 30-100 season in the past. And I'm curious, Derek, would you like to take a stab and try to name some of them?
Is Eduardo Escobar one of them?
Eduardo Escobar is one of them. Yes, that would be.
He was outrageously good when he was here.
Yeah, that was 2019. I think it was 35 homers, 118 RBI. So yes, that is one.
That's one.
Want to throw
Matt Williams
out there? Matt Williams, well done. Yep, 1999. Okay. He was 35 homers and 142 RBI. There's 2 other ones.
Chad Tracy.
Never Chad Tracy. That's a good guess. He probably got pretty close.
Yeah.
But I don't think he ever quite cracked 30 and 100.
Who do you got for the last 2?
The last 2 are Mark Reynolds, 2009.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that one at first. 2009, 44 homers. And 102 RBI. I think it's kind of
way more strikeouts than either one of those things combined.
Oh yeah, it was like 220 or something ridiculous like that. And then Jake Lamb is final one.
I should have thought Jake.
Yeah, honestly, I'd kind of forgotten that he got to 100. I think I had 30 homers in my head for 2017, but he did have 104 RBI in 2017 as well. So Geno is just the fifth Diamondbacks third baseman in franchise history to hit 30 and 100, and it was a really, really big part of why this offense was what it was this year.
Yeah, it absolutely was, and especially considering that most of that production has been since July, the end of June and the beginning of July is incredible, right? Like, it really, he has been a huge part of why the Diamondbacks are in this position, even though this position kind of sucks. It sucks that they got this close, Jesse. I was making the metaphorical reference to like losing by 1 point in fantasy football when you had a guy that scored way more than anybody you put in the game versus just getting getting beat like by 40, 30 points, something like that. That feels better than having to think about your decisions and having to pick apart whether you start this guy at running back or that guy at wide receiver. And the Diamondbacks are kind of in that position right now where should they not make the playoffs, I know we're going to have a lot of games we discussed where things went wrong. And I know that I get that off the screen again, Shane. I told you that earlier. We have a lot of things that we know went wrong. And I mean, I'm sure fans can think about a lot of scenarios, especially considering that the Diamondbacks could end up tied here and lose because of the way that things went in that Braves series early on this year, or, you know, the fact that they just could never figure out the Mets. I know there's a lot of games they gave away that we might discuss once everything, you know, kind of, or they make the postseason and we never talk about that stuff. We never have to speak of it ever again. We never have to speak of the 8-run lead that they lost ever again should they make the postseason. That's how easily they can make all of this go away and just have our focus be on their playoff run.
Torey on that note did say that he was pissed. Those are his words. Just thinking about all of the games the Diamondbacks left on the table this season, right? And
the Scott McGuff pinch hit. Oh my God, I forgot all about that one, Jesse.
Torey was asked, like, are you mostly just thinking about the games here in this past week? Obviously, the game a week ago today against the Brewers looms pretty large in this situation. And Torey was like, I'm thinking back to games all the way to the first road trip of the season. And that first road trip, Derek, was to Atlanta, where the Diamondbacks left some games on the table.
Yes,
And yeah, and he took responsibility as well. He said that, our guys could have played better and I could have managed better. So I think he's kind of looking at himself in the mirror in some of those situations as well. Any season where you play 162 games, you're going to have some that you are in the driver's seat to win and you let get away. And you're going to have some that are the opposite, where you have some sort of a dramatic comeback. But it does feel like the D-backs had a lot of games where they were in the driver's seat and they kind of let them slip away, right? And they did have some epic comebacks too. Not really early in the season, but as the season went on, there were some crazy comebacks for the Diamondbacks as well. So it does go both ways on some level, but it still feels like there were more games that it was like, oh my gosh, how did they wind up losing this thing?
You just focus on the losses if you don't make it in, and that's the reality of the matter, right? Again, it's like the Brewers series. You tell me that the Diamondbacks go into Milwaukee with that series being as important as it is, and the Diamondbacks take 3 out of 4, and we're pissed about the one loss? Yes, we are, because of how they lost it. It's not because they lost, and it's not in the matter in which, it's the fact that they were up 8-0, and they should have swept that series. And had they swept that series, right now, you would be covered in champagne, I would be jealous, and we would be talking about the Diamondbacks making it to the postseason. But that's not the reality that we live in. We live in this one, and this one kind of sucks right now. But it could be made better if the Mets take 2 from the Braves tomorrow, or if the Braves take 2 from the Mets tomorrow. And that's where we're at right now. Jesse and I, of course, you'll get the coffee. I'll bring the Egg McMuffins or whatever. That's probably a free ad. Max is going to be furious at me. But regardless, I'll meet you at the office very early so that we can watch these games and maybe put together a little watch along for all of you wonderful people that have been here with us all season long. Again, I just wanted to take a moment. I know I got mushy before Jesse joined us, but to thank you guys again for your support.
You already got mushy, Derek?
I already got mushy. I was just I had to kill some time, Jesse, until you got here. And so, you know me, I fall back on mushiness whenever I need to kill time. But we do sincerely thank all of you guys. You guys have made this season so much fun for us. You guys, the support for this show has been incredible. It's been beyond our wildest imaginations. I mean, we just had almost 400 people watching us last night after a loss, and that's not something that I think either one of us could have ever pictured. So we appreciate that we have become a place for you guys to come hang out after a game, discuss your thoughts, even if you just want to scream about Torey being fired, and hang out with us. And we thank you all season long. You guys have been here. We thank you for that. And of course, we hope to get more games. We hope this isn't our only post-game show of 2024. So hopefully we can bring you some more fun. And like I said, we will be here tomorrow doing a watch along, and then we'll do a post-game show after that doubleheader and discuss where we stand. And then of course, we'll have to figure out our regular schedule after that, what we do depending on the results and how fast I need to get Jesse a plane ticket. So of course, until then,
if they, I mean, so the Diamondbacks have a bit of an unfair advantage here, Derek, because they've got
your mic again. The short cord. It's we're working on getting him a new mic. It's all right. You got it. You're there.
You still hear me?
Yeah, you're in your AirPods now.
Yeah, I don't sound nearly as nice as I did earlier. You're just gonna have to bear with me. The Diamondbacks have an unfair advantage here because they've got a charter over at the airport that's just ready to go if they find out that they are advancing, whereas all of us civilians have to find a way to get politically in a very, very small window of time. So tomorrow night is going to be utter chaos on my part if the Diamondbacks actually do this thing.
They should let you on the plane. They should just let you on the plane. I think that's fair. You gave Zach Gallen the award the other day. We didn't even get to talk about that. But they should just let you on the plane. I think that's fair. Also, I think El Gallo in the chat said it earlier, but I did want to bring up this idea. They get on the plane anyway, right? They lose. They go somewhere. Go to an island, go somewhere together, go celebrate yourselves and just get away from it all for like 2 days. Just go get really drunk on a beach somewhere and hang out with your teammates and celebrate the fact that you guys, did this together as a family. You know what I mean? Like, don't let that airplane sitting at the airport go to waste. At least go get on it and take a trip around and then come back and land. I mean, something. Like, I would take a trip.
Yeah, well, at the very least, Derek, if they're not going to take the plane anywhere, the least they could do is let some of the media members on the airplane. We've all been grinding away for 162 over
Oh,
here. Can we
yeah.
like get a little, a little free flight, a little vacation action at
You're
the
not
end of the
wrong.
season?
You're not wrong. But
Uh,
before we get out of here, Jesse, let's take a look at this wild card graphic one last time, just for you to cover this scenario. Here we sit, 89 and 73. That's why tomorrow is so detrimental, right? All three teams, Braves, Mets, Diamondbacks, could all end up at 89 and 73. And if they do, because of that tiebreaker situation, that is how the Diamondbacks could end up on the outside looking in. That is the doomsday scenario right now for the Snakes.
Yeah, well, this graphic does not look the way that I expected it would at this point in the season. Number one, I would have expected the Braves and Mets to have played 162 games, but that has not been the case.
That's true.
And to see in the 3 wild card team era, to see an 89 win baseball team on the outside looking in is pretty wild. I'd have to go back. I know the 3rd wild card hasn't been around for all that long. Maybe there has been a team with 89 wins that has missed out before, but 89 and 73 is a pretty darn good season. Even before 3 wild cards, you figured that was going to be enough to make it to the postseason, at least a decent portion of the time. So yeah, I mean, again, it's not that the Diamondbacks had some miserable season. I mean, 89 is 5 more wins than they had a year ago, right? Like 89 wins that's a pretty darn good place to finish. But the level was just raised so high. I mean, credit to the Mets, credit to the Braves, the Padres finishing with 93 wins. I mean, that's remarkable. I think the Padres were 50 and 50 and they finished the year 43 and 19. Like, these teams just all got crazy hot about midway through the season, and it's landed us in this very bizarre place.
It's gross, and I hate it, but tomorrow at this exact time, we could be talking about the Diamondbacks actually being in the postseason, and that's
which is wild.
That's that one last glimmer of hope that we have. Of course, I'm not lying about that. Jesse's not lying, and we never lie to you. We always tell you the truth, and you know that. And of course, the numbers, they also don't lie. So, Jesse, at least for one last time during the regular season, what do you have for today's number that doesn't lie?
Today's number is 1408, 1.408. And that is Randall Grichuk's OPS in the month of September. He had just an outrageous month. I think it was 51 plate appearances. So he didn't find his way into the lineup all that often. Again, it's the whole platoon situation. But Randall Grichuk is going to get paid by someone this offseason, right? I mean, he came in here and not only was very, very good against lefties, which is primarily how he was used. That home run that he hit today was against Matt Waldron. That's a right-handed pitcher. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Grichuk's numbers against righties this year were at least good enough to where like you should be playing this guy every now and then, right? Whereas the Diamondbacks pretty much just they gave him at bats against righties, in kind of garbage time moments of games for the most part. They didn't really start him against righties very often. So yeah, the D-backs DH situation this year was awesome. I know we didn't see Jock in this game, and he's had a bit of a rough month here, but Jock finishing the season with an OPS over 900, Randall finishing with an OPS, I think it's 871, I want to say is the final number. Like, talk about a best case scenario for the D-backs at the DH slot.
876.
876. Thanks. I mean, that's just crazy. Even he had the platoon advantage for a lot of those at bats, but that's still a really, really high level of execution. And if the season does end tomorrow or whenever the season does end, we're going to have a lot of things to talk about on the show about how the D-backs can patch some things over the offseason. And one of the main questions is going to be, what do you do at the DH slot next year? Because I don't think Randall Grichuk's coming back, and I don't think Jock Peterson is coming back, at least not on their current contracts. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how the Diamondbacks try to patch that for next season.
I'm not ready for that yet, Jesse. Put that talk in a bag because we have a watch party to do tomorrow, and then
maybe the D-backs are going to the World Series, and maybe we're going to sound like idiots, Derek. We're going to look back a month from now and be like,
dumb. I love sounding
remember
dumb.
when we started talking about the offseason, like before the team went on some epic postseason run? Like we saw what happened last year, right? If the D-backs do get in tomorrow, anything can happen. But the odds are a little bit stacked against them on paper. It's going to be tough.
Well, of course, you can follow us all on Twitter. And again, join us tomorrow for that watch along. We will be live watching those two games. We will also have it's going to be a long period of time, Jesse. I don't know if
I'm going to put a caveat on that, Derek, because I don't think we're going to be live watching both of those games.
We're going to be live watching a game. We're going to be live watching 9 hours. Of one of those games, maybe, or some of it. I don't know. We're going to be watching it.
We'll do something like that. I think there will be some level of media availability here as well. So we'll have to find a way to kind of thread the needle and sort of be where we need to be. But yeah, we'll be live at some point tomorrow for sure. Like once we know the result, I'm sure we'll be live at that point.
Oh yeah, we will we'll have a post game show for you guys tomorrow after the doubleheader as well. So, but then TBD after that. We have no idea. Hopefully that TBD is filled with a lot of playoff games that we can cover for you. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter. I am at @cap_caveman with a K. Jesse is at Jesse N. Friedman. Our producer Shane is at Shane Deef. That's DIEFF. And he is the man once again for helping us out during this stretch where we just refuse to have any days off and just want to do this show nonstop 7 days a week. So thank you, Shane.
During the off season, we're still gonna bug Shane like in the middle of November for like hey,
we want to do an emergency pod on Saturday.
We should just do random emergency pods just to make sure that Shane never gets a day off for the rest of his life.
We gotta keep him. We gotta keep him. We gotta keep him fresh. Like we gotta keep him on his toes. So we'll do that. But now you're going to the Waffle House.
My fantasy team is a force to be reckoned with. All right, we are 2-1. Although, granted, I haven't looked at today's results. Maybe Shane
until you have one of these, Jesse, you have no room to talk about anything, and that's it. Oh, and Shane says you're losing.
Shane says I'm losing. Yeah, I'm 500.
That's not a surprise.
Could be worse.
No, I'm sure I'm
better than last year.
But anyway, we thank you guys so much for joining us today. Of course, we hope to see you tomorrow. In the meantime, make sure to follow our show at PHNX_DBacks, and all roads, of course, do lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We love you. We thank you for showing up. We will see you hopefully with some very good news tomorrow. In the meantime, enjoy your football, enjoy your evening, and remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when you know your fate after 162 games.
We all silly like the mayor.